European Union leaders say they're ready to impose fresh sanctions on Russia if the situation in Ukraine does not improve. Let's get more now on diplomatic efforts to resolve that crisis in Ukraine. Dr. Michael Slobodovich is a political science lecturer at Troy University in Alabama, and he's just written a book about Russia's relations with the former Soviet states called Building Hegemony, Russia's Way. Thanks for joining us, Professor. Tell me, it does seem that the situation is just being escalated higher and higher. How did the two sides de-escalate things?
Well, I think everyone's aware that there has to be a diplomatic solution. They have to sit down at the table and resolve this diplomatically. And so I think that ultimately there has to be a federal Ukraine with a lot of regional autonomy. And I think there also has to be the idea that Ukraine will never join NATO. Otherwise, Russia will never agree.
But we heard Ukraine and the EU talking about the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO. What do you think is going to happen there?
Well, I think Ukraine is definitely going to ask, in fact, has already asked NATO for immediate membership. And NATO's entertaining that thought. However, I think that if NATO does accept Ukrainian membership, we'll see a lot more conflict. And Russia will certainly get even more involved in Ukraine.
I mean, is NATO really considering this? Because it could lead essentially to war. I mean, NATO would have to defend Ukraine.
Absolutely, it could lead to war. And I think NATO is very wary about going down this step. But I think NATO also feels that it really has to show, especially the Baltic states and Poland, that it's very serious about protecting its member states.
So tell me, how does this whole situation affect Russia's relationship with its former states, the former Soviet states?
Well, there is a high amount of mistrust among the former Soviet states of Russia, and I think that this does not help its relationships with them. However, I think that Russia now has a lot more military might and a lot more of a will to ensure that NATO doesn't enter those territories. So I think it's causing Georgia and Moldova questions about whether or not they really want to join NATO.
Okay, Professor, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.